In 1981, the Noble family and the Seaman family spent a week, rented a house and spent a week skiing at HoliMont, which is a private ski club in Ellicottville, New York, the next mountain over from Holiday Valley. And we, during the time we were in Cleveland, we were members of HoliMont. I think the whole time we were in Cleveland, and maybe even a little before when we were in. I think we were members of HoliMont before that, because the Siemens and the Nobles were going skiing all the time up in Ellicottville. So that was a great joy to be able to ski in Ellicottville. And Gail and I, my parents owned a condo up there, not a condo, a house in Ellicottville for some years. And then Gail and I had a condo when my parents sold their house, thinking that maybe I'd stop skiing, but that didn't work. We
bought your own house.
We bought our own condo up there, and continued to ski. So we skied until I couldn't ski anymore.
When was that?
It was about the time. It was shortly after we had moved back to Wooster, and my balance and my neuropathy was the beginning of my neuropathy. But I continued trying to ski until one day I fell over and broke my shoulder. And they hauled me off the hill on the toboggan, and it was clear it was time to quit.
That was your last slope.
That was my last run.
Yeah.
And the other thing we did a lot was we had a water ski boat, and we would take it to West Branch. We loved to just go ride on, take it on Lake Erie, and wander up the various rivers, the Cuyahoga River, the Grand River. So that was, and we also took it to Ellicottville, New York. There was a lake called the Allegheny Reservoir in the middle of the Allegheny National Forest, a 35-mile long lake with no settlement, no houses. There were 2 marinas on either end of the lake, and that was it for development. So it looked like you were in the middle of Canada,
Yeah.
and it was lots of inlets and outlets so that you could always find a place to water ski. July of 1986, they had a party in New York Harbor to celebrate the birthday of the Statue of Liberty. The tall ships came. They had 13 barges strung from the Brooklyn Bridge to the Statue of Liberty. And for half an hour, those 13 barges each had the same fireworks show, all done to music on FM radio. The most amazing, unbelievable fireworks show you've ever seen in your life. There were 40,000 boats in New York Harbor, everything from little 19-foot ski boats like ours to the Queen Mary, the John F. Kennedy aircraft carrier, ships from all over the world, naval vessels from all over the world. It was, they said it was the biggest party in the history of the world. And all these boats are anchored in New York Harbor for this fireworks show. And it was known, there were reports in the newspapers and whatnot, that halfway through the show, the tide was going to turn. So when I got to when we dropped our anchor in New York Harbor for this show, and we did it about 3 hours before it was supposed to start, I was very careful to set that anchor and really set that anchor because I knew that the boat was going to swing. When that happened, it was really exciting because a lot of boats, they hadn't set their anchor very well, and there was this sound of gel coat on gel coat as boats were running into each other because they didn't know what they were doing. But we had to entertain ourselves for 3 hours until the show was going to begin. So one thing we had on board was a kite and a bunch of balloons. And it was one of those long-tailed Chinese kind of kites. And we put that thing up, and there was a lovely wind blowing, and it just so happened by accident we were anchored upwind from the Statue of Liberty. So that we put this kite up, and it was blowing toward the Statue of Liberty. Well, we're flying the kite. We take some balloons. We had some black balloons, and we tied them on a kite string. If you tie a balloon loosely on a kite string, the wind will blow the balloon up the kite string to the kite. And we put about 6 balloons on this kite, and it was blowing right toward the Statue of Liberty. I put every piece of string I had on that boat on that kite, trying to get it toward the Statue of Liberty. Finally, I gave up. I just said, let's go for it. And I let go of the kite. And it's dipping and doodling, and it's blowing toward the statue. And then all of a sudden, it's flying again. Somebody grabbed the kite string. Well, it was another boat that was right close to the security line at the Statue of Liberty. So this guy saw the kite string come across his boat, and he just grabbed it. Well, as you might imagine, security was kind of tight. And 3 security boats descended on this guy, a New York boat, a Coast Guard boat, and something else. And all the boats around us had seen what had happened. And so we all start blowing our horn because, see, this guy's in trouble. And they pull, he's pulling down the kite string, and I just imagine he's telling, this is not my kite. I just grabbed it. But hey, yeah, Bal, you're holding on to it. You bring it in. And he brought it in. And of course, all there was balloons. So it wasn't a big deal. But I'm sure that poor guy was a little bit worried. But that's how ADHD people entertain themselves. You know, the thing I've not yet talked about is after Cleveland, and after I retired from practicing law.
When was it that you retired?
Well,
and how did you know it was time?
In the late 90s, it became clear to me that I was deteriorating, that I didn't have the energy that I had once had, that is frankly necessary to be a trial lawyer. And I didn't want to continue if I couldn't be as effective as I had always been. And so I started moving toward retirement in around late 98, early 97. Early 99. And by the summer of 99, I had decided to retire. We bought a house in Wooster. We moved to Wooster. I continued to have an office in Cleveland. I continued to do my practice for about another 2 years after that, because shutting down a busy law practice is just I thought building a law practice would be difficult. Building a law practice is easy. Getting rid of a law practice is what's really tough. And I've done all this work for Columbia, and I had to help them find a substitute. I tried to persuade them to adopt a couple of lawyers in my firm in Cleveland. Toward the end of my practice, I ended up with my association with John Sullivan ended, and I joined a firm that we had it was a firm of Walter and Haverfield, and we had our offices on the 13th floor. We couldn't be superstitious in this law firm because we were on the 13th floor of a tower named Terminal overlooking a lake named Erie. And the most amazing thing that happened was the people from the Ohio Department of Natural Resources built a platform right outside the window of our conference room to be a nesting place for peregrine falcons. And there they were. The peregrine falcons were outside this window feeding pieces of pigeon to their chicks. I mean, most amazing sight, because peregrine falcons, they're the fastest animal on the planet. They dive bomb pigeons or other birds at about 200 miles an hour, wheel around, grab them with their talons, and take them off for dinner for their chicks. And the falcons were there for a number of years, and after they'd consumed all the pigeons on the square in Cleveland, why, they were gone. And Gail and I intended to retire and travel. And we did some traveling. And then my parents, our return to Wooster was providential, because particularly my mother, who had had a stroke, I don't know, when she was like 74 years old, she had had a stroke. And by the time we moved back to Wooster, she was deteriorating, and fairly shortly after that, we had the two of us put our foot down and told her and my dad that she really needed to go to assisted living, because he was deteriorating from trying to take care of her. And then also, right about that time, my dad decided he wanted to build an ice arena. And so I facilitated his travel around to ice arenas in Ohio and Michigan. And we finally built what became known as the Alice Noble Ice Arena. And I've been running that ever since, and I've been a president of the foundation that my dad started. He started the foundation back in, I think, 1993, because he did not know where he wanted his money to go, but he did know where he did not want his money to go. He didn't want to go to the federal government, and he didn't want it to go to his kids, which was fine. But he ran the foundation until just before he died. And then he set up a board of trustees and selected me as the first president of the foundation. And I've been running that foundation and running that ice arena ever since. And if you could tell me how to get rid of those jobs, I'd be very happy.
So why did he want to build an ice arena? He could have built a lot of different things.
He could have. He and my mother had their first date ice skating. And they loved to ice skate. For years, our family would go to Miller's Lakes and ice skate. And during my entire growing up, my parents were always talking about how they had these fantasies about having the fire department flood a field and have an ice arena. And then they talked about, if you did that, maybe you should build aside some way to get it out of the wind and somewhere to protect it from the snow. And I mean, this thing kind of got bigger and bigger. And then finally my dad decided that he really wanted to build an ice arena. And we hired people that knew how to build ice arenas, and Ted Bogner built the ice arena for us. We started it in August of '01, and in November of '01, my dad was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer and told that he probably had 6 months to live. About 2 weeks after that, Ted Bogner came to me and said, "David, this project has turned from being a construction project to being a mission." He said, "I am going to get your parents on that ice before your dad dies." And he pushed the construction of that ice arena, and unbelievable. There were days that he had 80 bricklayers and 40 plumbers working on that building, trying to get it to where my dad where it would be complete before my dad died. And we scheduled a show. We called it the Showing of the Ice, for an afternoon in June of '02. And Ted Bogner built an incredible sleigh for my parents to sit in and my sister to push them around on the ice. And we were going to show off the ice arena. And we scheduled it initially for the 26th of June. And in May, Ted Bogner called me and said, "David, I think I can peel another week off this construction schedule. Should I do it?" I said, "Yes, Ted. Dad's not doing so well. See if you can do it a little quicker." So we rescheduled it for the 19th of June. And about 4 days before this, Ted called me up and he said, "David, we're definitely going to have ice." And I said, "Great, Ted. Are we going to have Johns?" He said, "Well, frankly, I don't know." I said, "Well, we're going to have about 250 people show up for this Showing of the Ice affair. It might be good to have Johns." He said, "I'll check." Pretty soon he called me back and he said, "David, we're definitely going to have Johns. But I'm not sure if we'll have modesty panels. The girls might have to watch each other beat." As it turned out, his carpenters put up temporary modesty panels that were just sheets of plywood. So, and we got my parents on the ice on the 19th of June, and my dad died 10 days later.